1981 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was taken down the Mississippi to Evansville, Indiana, operated for 5 years on the Ohio River. Then it went to Arkansas, operated 15 years on the Arkansas River. 24 years ago, we went to Arkansas, bought the boat, changed the name, had 2 huge trucks, bring it up here in Michigan. It weighs over 60 tons, has a capacity of 150 plus crew. If that many were on board, 140. You'd be up here on the upper deck, all squeezed over along the rail on one side, the boat would still be stable. So you can move around all you want, boat's not going to move under you. You go between decks anytime. You're going to walk out in front of the pilot house on the upper deck, that's okay. You can stand out there, captain can see by you, not a problem. The whistle's out there, so wait for us to blow that. Don't want to be there when that happens. We'll do that right after we leave the dock. Once you hear it, you can move around all you want. We have soft drinks, bottled water, and coffee on the boat. We have a couple snacks on the boat, hot pretzels to get them with or without salt or cheese, and we make the world's best popcorn on the boat. It's made in coconut oil. It's not good for you when it's $2. And you can feed ducks. They're little tiny high-speed guys. They're just like bullets when they see popcorn. My name is Gene, and one of the captains also do the narration on the boat. I'll be a deckhand on this trip with Jeremy and Devin. Stan and Mitch are on the boat. They're my sons. They're both captains. We own and operate the boat. It's not some big company. It's us. Thanks for riding with us. Mitch is the captain on this trip, and the U.S. Coast Guard requires this vessel be no smoking, no vaping. As soon as we get sideways in the river, we're going to blow the big horn on the boat again. It's located out in front of the pilot house. It's on a white pylon in front of the captain's window. If you look out there, right beyond him, you can see it out there. It's brass and bronze. This is called the Kallenberg triple chime. These were common on riverboats in the 1800s. Those were steam-powered vessels, so they used steam to blow them. They could do that all they wanted. We're diesel-powered, so we have to use compressed air. And we can only do that for about 7 seconds. It empties a 240-gallon air tank in that length of time. So it uses a tremendous amount of air. It works on the same principle as blowing across the top of a soda bottle. There's a large bronze casting with 3 circular slots, and above each one of those slots is an open bottom brass cylinder. Those cylinders are 3 different sizes, and that's why it's called a triple chime. Again, it's a Kallenberg triple chime. When the captain reaches up to pull the handle, if you close your eyes, you can almost imagine that you're on your way to Nolans. There are not too many horns you can feel when you blow them. I really do think it would be fun to put one of these on an SUV. I'm sure some of you looked down at the boat and thought it wouldn't fit under these bridges. Actually, it doesn't. We just go back and forth in here. Boats like this in the 1800s were called packet boats. A packet boat carried passengers, but also carried a lot of cargo. Quite often on a packet boat on the lower level, they'd build a deck that extended about 9 feet on either side of the hull. Usually they'd stack cotton bales on those. Sometimes they'd stack them so high the captain could hardly see where he was going. It made them a lot of extra money, but it also caused a problem because sparks came onto the smokestacks and set fire to the cotton bales. Riverboats evolved very quickly with tall stacks, sometimes 60 to 70 feet high. In fact, every 4 years in Cincinnati, there's been a festival called Tall Stacks, where riverboats from all over the country come up the Mississippi and up the Ohio to Cincinnati, where you can ride on all the different sizes of these vessels. The tall stacks solved the problem of setting fire to the cotton bales, but it caused another problem. As years went on, more and more roads were built, therefore bridges were built that they couldn't get under. So riverboats are one of the few vessels that have smokestacks that retract. The original design was to put a hinge at the bottom of the stack on the backside right at the deck. They would have lines hanging off the backside of the stack and lines hanging off the front going down to an A-frame on the bow. When they came to a low bridge, half the crew would get on the bow Half the crew would get behind the stacks, the crew in the back would pull back on the lines, while the crew in the front let the E-frame come up. The stacks would retract. After they did that, they cleared the bridge. They'd reverse that process. That was dangerous because the stacks were so tall and heavy. They were also hot and full of soot because they directly exhausted the boilers. Somebody finally figured out the problem was not the tall stack. It was just the top of it. So they simply moved the hinge up toward the top, put a counterweight on the outside so one person could easily tip them back. The top of our stacks weigh about 100 pounds, but when we pick up on the iron bar on the outside, they feel virtually weightless. The only problem in tipping our stacks back, because they're not functional, they can't fill up with water. But that only affects people up here in the first class seats. We do have a name for it. We call it riverboat baptism. We don't charge extra for that. We normally clear the bridge by about 18 inches, but in marine navigation, an inch is a mile. If you miss something by an inch, it might as well be a mile away. The two sides of the boat are the port and the starboard. The port is on the left as you face the front, and the starboard is on the right. If you want to remember that, port is spelled with 4 letters, and so is left. Over on the port side, just under the water, near the shore, there's a piece of concrete. It's not always visible, but it's the last remaining piece of a sawmill that was there for many years. From 1850 to 1890, Saginaw Valley that we're in was the world's largest producer of white pine lumber. Every waterway in the state was used to float logs down to the sawmill, where it was cut up and shipped all over the world. That was true of this river, and that's also what that mill did. The Hubinger Mill was built in 1847. Just about any town you go to in Michigan that's on or near a waterway, someone can show you very large homes. They will tell you were built by lumber barons, and that's when the lumber barons cashed in from 1850 to 1890. We're on the Cass River. The Cass was named after Lewis Cass. He was only 31 years old at the time. He had already been a brigadier general in the Army. He was appointed governor by the president because Michigan was still a territory. In fact, surveyors had gone back to Washington after looking over this territory and described it as an uninhabitable, worthless, mosquito-infested swamp. So they didn't think too much of it. Lewis Cass had a much better image of this area. A lot of things here are named after him: cities, streets, and also rivers. Also on the left side of the boat is a dike with a concrete wall on the top. That was put there in the 1950s by the Corps of Engineers. Before that was in place, Frankenmuth would flood every year. It was quite common, especially in the spring, to see rowboats on Main Street. The highest the water has been since that's been in place was 1986. The water went all the way up to the top of the concrete wall. It came within an inch of going over the top. If it would have been 4 feet deep in the Bavarian restaurant main dining room, which is actually on the second floor. So the Corps of Engineers did a pretty good job figuring out what the 100-year flood level would be using slide rules before computers. Major improvements were made to the dike and a scenic river walk was added in 2020. Obviously, the upper side of the river does flood. There's no dike on that side. The Bavarian Lodge over there, for the most part, is built above the 100-year flood level. The yellow portion would have gotten wet, but it wasn't there then. The lodge originally was 100 rooms. Today it's 355. It has 5 indoor pools. It also has an indoor 18-hole miniature golf course. It's built on the side of a rice farm, and the rice farmhouse set right where the main lobby is. Those large architectural elements on the roof look like onion domes, are actually called onion domes. Seems kind of like a weak name, but that's what they're called. Those are common in Bavaria. Bavaria is a fairly large portion of Germany. At one time, it was a separate kingdom, and that's where the settlers of Frankenmuth originated. The Cass River is very shallow. From our dock is the deepest portion of this part of the river. It's 12 to 15 feet deep there. Right here it's only 6 or 7 feet deep, but that's one of the advantages of a true flat-bottom riverboat. This is built exactly like the Mississippi riverboats. The bottom is flat and it has no keel. The advantage to that is that we can carry a tremendous amount of weight. Even though the boat weighs well over 50 tons, we can add 150 passengers to that. There's only 24 inches of the boat beneath the water. It sounds silly, but you can be standing in water a little above your knees, and we can float right by you, fully loaded. The paddle wheel does drive us forward and reverse. It's driven by a diesel hydraulic system. It is real, it's not fake. In fact, it only goes in the water 10 inches. A packet boat captain once said that a correctly designed packet boat should be able to float on the morning dew. Most of the homes along Main Street, Frankenmuth, have been converted to businesses, but these right here on the left, beyond the concrete wall, are still residences. That large brown house actually had a twin on the property where the Bavarian Lodge sits. When the lodge was built, parts of that home were used to expand this house and also do some architectural corrections to it. The hotel on the left side of the boat opened in 2007. It's named after Marv Herzog. Marv was a polka band leader. He lived his life here in Frankenmuth and was known around the world. His wife was involved in building the hotel and named it after him. It took some time to complete the structure. Because of the small size of the property, all the parking had to be under the building. The brick building on the left for over 100 years was a brewing company. It opened in 1862 as Cass River Brewing. It later became Geyer Brothers. They brewed Frankenmuth beer and also Pioneer Ale. In 1996, they were still in business. A tornado came through Frankenmuth, did a lot of damage, and also destroyed several homes, and destroyed a good part of this building. Today, it is Frankenmuth Brewery Restaurant. Also up ahead of us on the left is a red brick building and some silos. That is Star of the West Milling Company. Star of the West is a major supplier in the United States of flour that's used for making pie crust and also cookies. And that's because they build Michigan white wheat, which is very low in gluten and is ideal for that purpose. If you've ever had any Sara Lee products or Pepperidge Farm products, or perhaps a pie from McDonald's restaurants, you've had Star of the West flour. The company is named after a Civil War ship, over 100 years old. That large silo on the hill holds 260,000 bushels of wheat, and that's only a 22-day supply of wheat for the mill. This river has a lot of turtles in it. Turtles like the sun because they're cold-blooded, not much sun left, but I see some laying out. They like the sun because they're cold-blooded, also digest their food. body temperature is kind of based on what the outside temperature is. Besides turtles in the river are varied. We have spiny soft-shell turtles are very large, and they have another reason to be famous besides being large. They're also one of the fastest turtles on land. If you go online and simply type in super fast turtle, the first thing that pops up is a video of a spiny soft-shell running. It's scary. Turtles shouldn't go that fast. On the right side of the boat is Heritage Park. Looks a lot like any other city park with soccer fields and softball diamonds, but it's also the site of many festivals throughout the year. The four largest are the Bavarian Festival, the Music Fest, the Oktoberfest, and the Autofest. The Autofest attracts 2,000 automobiles in the park every year. Classic automobiles. It's one of the neatest family events in Frankenmuth. Also, the Oktoberfest is the only one outside the original in Munich, Germany, that's sanctioned by the German government. The first Oktoberfest was held in Munich in 1810 as a 3-week celebration for the wedding of King Ludwig and Princess Teresa. It's still held every year today, and it's the world's largest public celebration. And even that one, the one in Frankenmuth, are held in October. Even though they're both called Oktoberfest, they're both held in September, simply because the weather was better. On the left side of the river, this large blue and white building is the Harvey Fair Pavilion. It was built in 2005. One of the reasons was to help eliminate the need for tents for festivals. They all required the use of several very large, expensive branded tents. It helps with that cost. Also gives the town an indoor venue to be used in the winter. It has a capacity of 5,000. Small dock on the right looks complicated. It just has a unique design. It suits it as someone even in a wheelchair. Has the opportunity to possibly launch and re-dock your own kayak or canoe using the seat system, the handrails, and all of that. Heritage Park on the right, back in the 1950s, was not a park. It was a swamp. Imagine the swamp on the block downtown and no mosquito control. Great idea to help you in. The park got two major parks here. Heritage Park, and on the left, if you see this big boulder over here, look back in there, you'll see a road. On the other side of that road is Memorial Park. Memorial Park is 18 years large. The other part, Memorial Park, though, is very hilly. It's fantastic sledding hills. There's also a band shell. The band shell is built kind of in a bowl-shaped thing, and out in front of it, all the grass, and you can go out there and set the grass rest around there. Every Sunday evening, there's a concert there. And it's all free. There's also a splash pad in Memorial Park. Up ahead of us on the right, a lot of trees on top of that bank. There are also hundreds of acres of farmland that goes on for several miles. Left side of the river, much lower elevation. There is a road that runs parallel to the shoreline, as I said. And that road is about 900 feet from the edge of the water. And there's some homes along there, so in essence, we're looking at their backyards. There are no homes down by the water. That's west flood several times every year. It's a fantastic place for the year. No one hunts back in there because of the proximity of homes. And there's plenty of food, a lot of vegetation. So far this year we've seen several fawns, probably somewhere around 7 or 8. This is a season that does have children. Much of it there could be on either side of the river. Woodcarver's Guild. For many years, a famous woodcarver lived in Frankenmuth. His name was George Kylehofer. George passed away a few years ago, but he taught a lot of people the skills necessary to be a master carver, and those people today are teaching others. It's a very active organization. They meet there twice a week, and when they're in the building, it's open to the public. On the left side of the boat, the port side, is this beautiful area of willows, cottonwoods, and pine trees. Looks like it should be a park, and at one time it was used for that. In 1845, when Frankenmuth was first settled, there were no parks, and the German families that lived here would use this area for picnics and family reunions. Quite often when they did, they would have a photographer with them, so the museum has a lot of very old family portraits of large German family gatherings in Jupiter Grove at their annual family reunions. It's still called Jupiter Grove today. It was even used up until the 1960s as a traditional place to have family get-togethers. It went out of use because of the sale of land, and also the city developed Heritage Park on the other side of the river that at one time was a swamp. The Cass River is typical of rivers in the Saginaw Valley. This area could more correctly be called the Saginaw floodplain because it doesn't take much in the way of rainfall for rivers to go over their banks, and when they do, they come back into the channel and it brings silt with it. We've been told that in the 1800s, the rivers in this area were very clean and pristine. But as more and more farmland was built, more silt ended up in the rivers. There's a lot of fish in this river, a lot of bass, and also pickerel. This river flows into the Tittabawassee, which is a world-class walleye tournament fishing river, and it looks just like this. There's also a lot of wildlife along the river. In Jupiter Grove, that goes all the way up around the bend in the river, there are a lot of deer. At the right time of the year, we see a lot of new fawns born back in there, and it's quite often that we see them come out right along the river and watch us as we go by. There's also a lot of small animals. Muskrats, woodchucks, beavers, minks. It's also common to see great blue heron. The great blue heron is a very large bird. It stands over 3 feet tall. It stands very still in shallow water along the shore. They wait for a fish to swim by, and when it comes along, they just reach down and snatch it up. The great blue heron is common in the northern states in the U.S. and also Canada. Some people refer to them as a crane. You actually can tell the difference. When you see a crane flying, its neck is straight. When you see a great blue heron flying, its neck actually has a Z shape to it. And that's an easy way to tell the difference. That tree over there on the left along the shoreline usually has turtles on it. I haven't seen it, but they probably are. Or we're being attacked by ducks. Where they come from. Just to add up something here, right? The channel you see is actually a boat well. That's where the boat spends the winter. It freezes in. Ice on this river many years is over 2 feet thick. Rivers like this in the springtime are vicious when ice breaks loose, coupled with flooding ice dams form and pile up behind one another. All of a sudden, one of them breaks loose, the smooth wall of ice and water comes ripping down the river, making a lot of racket. When that happens, they hills on the side of the well protect the boat. Frozen in its own block of ice back in the well. It doesn't hurt a steel vessel to freeze in as long as it's properly built and as long as it's not in moving ice. And that's why we keep the boat well. The boat in the boat well, not in the river channel. You do see a lot of different kinds of animals along the river. You never know when we're going to see one and we get there. Great blue herons are really very common. I've seen them several times. They see bald eagles and osprey. They're both apex predators, which means they have no enemies. But when they're flying around up above, Alaska, and it's only a couple inches taller. Great horned owls are not seen that much, even though they're everywhere in your neighborhood, in cities. And they're not seen much because they're nocturnal. They do all their hunting at night. Daytime, they find a tree and just take a nap in it. So unless you happen to be going by the tree, you don't see them. And we've been lucky enough to catch pictures of them sitting up in trees, so they're photographs down below, great horned owls. They're one of the few animals that regularly kill and eat skunks. Probably helps the fact they have a poor sense of smell. But they also can take down and kill a bobcat. They're fearless hunters, very effective. The Cass River is about 65 miles long. It gets its water from several tributaries up in the Thumb area. A lot of it comes off farmland. It flows eventually into the Shiawassee River, the Tittabawassee River, and the Saginaw, then into Saginaw Bay and into Lake Huron. We could go about another hour upriver. We come to rocks we couldn't navigate. The only reason we can navigate this part of the river, there's a dam about 300 feet west of our dock that keeps the level up. That dam was put there over 100 years ago as a power source for a mill. In the 1980s, the mill was torn down and completely rebuilt, and it stands today just as it did 100 years ago. That dam was built in 1848 as a power source for the Hubinger flour mill. Except for a 30-year span, the Hubinger mill continued to produce flour until the early 1990s. The mill remains fully functional, however, the machinery is silent.
Propeller down there that
people ask us
drops,
how fast we're going.
and then spun us around.
We don't go fast. We're going 3 knots. What does that mean? 1 knot is 1.15 miles an hour. And so we're going just a little faster than 3 miles an hour. You can relate to that because walking speed is considered to be 3 miles an hour. So if there was a sidewalk over there on shore, and you were walking along at walking speed, you could keep up with us for quite a while, but eventually you get tired. Up ahead of us on the right, I just want to point out something that's kind of interesting. That dead tree on the right usually has a lot of turtles laying on it. But if you look up above that, you see a limb way up above that, kind of sticking out over the water. That wispy-looking limb, that's become a favorite place for a groundhog. Groundhogs actually climb trees. Most people don't know that. And this particular, he's not up there right now, I don't think, but this particular ground on the light set, limb up there, and it's kind of funny to see that fat guy wrestling with that limb, trying to get a grip on it so he can eat the leaves. And that's what they do, they go up in the trees and eat leaves. So I guess you can call groundhogs tree hogs. Why not? Groundhogs, woodchucks, whistle pigs, snow pigs, tree hogs, rock badgers, snow pigs, all kinds of things. Everywhere you go, different names. You ever wonder where turtles go in the winter? They don't migrate. Think about it. They never get there. Turtles actually do something very interesting. In cold places like Michigan, things freeze over. And a turtle is cold-blooded, so the turtle's temperature is closely related to what the outside temperature is. So they can sense when it's getting very cold. And they very simply go down to the bottom of the body of water they're in and rest on the bottom. And they spend the winter down there. And they fall asleep. Many times during the winter, they'll wake up. Sometimes they'll eat something and they go back to sleep again. But how do they breathe? They're underwater all winter. And turtles do something special. And some reptiles do this also. They actually have the ability, let me tell you where it is first. It's around their lung, backside of the throat. Around that area, they have the ability to absorb oxygen from the water into the skin, into little blood capillaries and veins under the skin, and it gives them enough oxygen to survive the winter. Their heartbeat sometimes is once in several minutes. Their body is very slow down. But that's how they get oxygen to breathe. It's pretty slick. This boat has not always been on the Cass River. It was built on the Mississippi River in 1981 in La Crosse, Wisconsin by La Crosse Boat Works. It was built for Kentuckiana Packet Lines, and the family that owned that company wanted a vessel to use in Evansville, Indiana as a dinner boat. They had it built, they took it down the Mississippi and up the Ohio, and they operated there for 5 years as the Spirit of Evansville. They then had an agreement with the city of North Little Rock, Arkansas, and they took it there, and they operated for 15 years as the Spirit of North Little Rock. When we decided to put a boat at River Place, we bought this from them in early 1999. When we did, it looked a lot different than it does now. The cloth roof on the upper deck was steel, and the pilot house sat 12 feet behind where it is right now, and it was 2 stories tall. It was built that way so it could have a third deck added. They never needed one, and if we put one on, there's no way we'd get under the covered bridge. So the first thing we did was cut the steel off the roof. We cut 7 feet off the pilot house and moved it forward so the captain could still see over the bow. We operated on the Arkansas that way for 2 months with no passengers to get everything recertified. We then took everything off the upper deck, the railing, the roof supports, the smokestacks that used to be 15 feet taller, the pilot house, and also the gangplank assembly. We put all of that on one truck. We took the hull and paddle wheel assembly, that weighed over 60 tons at that point. We put that on a separate truck. That truck was 20 feet wide and 126 feet long. It's not very likely you've ever seen anything this large going down the highway before. The 1,100-mile trip from Arkansas should have taken 4 or 5 days. but because of bad weather with ice in the south and snow up here in the north, it took over 2 months. It could not travel on interstates because it would shut down one direction of an interstate. It had to travel on Class A state highways and U.S. highways, and every time it did that, it required at least 5 police cars to escort it. It sat for a month in Angola, Indiana, waiting for the snowbanks to recede before the state of Michigan would allow us to enter the state. When it finally did arrive in Frankenmuth, we brought it into Heritage Park on the left side of the boat. If you look at the pavilion, you can see a black fence, and at the right end of that, a gravel road coming into the park. That road had to be rebuilt because it wasn't suitable to carry a load this size. When the truck arrived with the boat on it, it had already been done. It was able to come down onto the grass. It was nice green grass at that point because we had spent the previous 2 months plowing all the snow off of it. It came parallel to the sidewalk, went up to the sycamore tree, between that and the leaning tree, and we had 2 175-ton cranes pick it off the truck, set it on timbers, and we started to rebuild it. The salon area down below, even though it was a working dinner room, we elected to strip that back to bare metal, and that's all been redone with hardwood cherry with a natural finish. That was typical of riverboats in the 1800s. They used fine hardwoods throughout. In fact, Mark Twain even said that riverboats were floating palaces. The pilot house also has a hickory floor and mahogany door, and that's typical of those vessels in the 1800s. You may be asking yourself why we brought this up from Arkansas on a truck. The original plan was to bring it up the Mississippi River through the Illinois Ship Canal and sail it around the Great Lakes to Bay City, Michigan, where we would have a very short 30-mile trip on a truck. It very simply got too late in the year. Many times in the fall and also this spring, the Mississippi River flows south at 6 miles per hour, sometimes faster. This boat cruises at 7 or 8 miles an hour. If you do the math, you would realize that we actually could have seen some species of trees grow as we made our way north. We calculated we would be in Lake Michigan sometime in November. That's not a good time to be there. So rather than retrieve the boat off the bottom of Lake Michigan and then put it on a truck, we thought we'd just leave it on the truck. Side of the river is this large silo at Scarlet West Milling Company that I mentioned before that holds 260,000 bushels of wheat. The mill can empty that silo in 11 days. If you look up at the top of the silo, something you probably wouldn't think about, there are a lot of antennas up there. Anytime someone builds a tall structure, someone would be willing to pay a lot of rent for a little bit of space to put an antenna up. Saves them the huge expense of having to build and maintain a tower. Right now there are over 50 antennas on the silo. You can multiply 50 times however much you might think they collect in rent every month for each one of those spots, and you can see very quickly it's an enormous income stream for the mill. The tall rectangles up there, for the most part, are cell phone and wireless antennas. The round antennas are microwave, used for long-distance data transmissions. There are also some voice communication antennas up there, very tall, white fiberglass poles aimed straight up at the sky. There are also some repeaters up there. Repeaters have been around for a long time. They were invented by ham radio operators. They're very useful devices. They actually pick up signals from other small, weaker radios, like the handheld radios we use on the boat. It picks those signals up and repeats the signal, that's where it gets its name, through a very powerful transmitter located up on the silo. It sends the signal back out and makes a little handheld radio effective for many miles. Docks at River Place. River Place was opened in July of 2000. For many years, that was the site of a major brewing company. Originally, it was Carling Brewing Company. Then it became G. Heilemann Brewing. The most famous beer they brewed was Carling Black Label. They went bankrupt in 1981. The Zender family bought the property. In the summer of 1999, they tore it down to build River Place. They took down everything except the basement. The basement there is a cavernous structure that has ceilings almost 20 feet high. So when you're walking around River Place, about 85% of the stores and the sidewalks are actually setting on the ceiling of the old basement. They also thought far enough ahead to build a tunnel 285 feet long that goes east off the basement over toward available land, so that if they ever build on the River Place, those stores will be able to access that same storage through the tunnel. The sidewalks in River Place are heated, so there's no ice or snow there in the winter. The pedestrian bridge 60 feet west of our dock also has a heated deck, as is the sidewalk going from the north end of that bridge out to the pavilion and restroom. On the left side of the river, behind the trees, behind that fence with the yellow top on it, huge construction site back there. That's a new water park. They started building that early last year. Won't be done till late this year, and it's enormous. That structure way up on the top is a roof. Water parks in the north have to have a roof on them, but most of them have a glass roof. This one also will have a glass roof. Inside the water park, there will be 16 individual water slides. That's just part of it. And there will be a aerial park. Aerial parks are up in trees. Not sure how they're going to do that, but it's being built by the Bavarian Inn Lodge. It'll become part of their complex, and it will easily be one of the largest water parks in the Midwest. The covered bridge up ahead of us was built in 1979 by a father and a son. The father at the time was 70 years old. He was described as an engineer, designer, and hand builder of covered bridges. This particular bridge was built on land on the east side of the river, and it was built all by hand. It took them 2 years to build it, and while they were doing that, a contractor was putting the concrete bridge piers in the river bottom. When they got done building the bridge, they jacked it up and they put timbers under it. They extended the timbers out across the bridge piers to the west shore. They put log rollers under the bridge, attached the cable to the end of the bridge, extended that across to the west shore, put block and tackle in the cable, and wrapped the end of it around the capstan on the west shore. For 12 days, 2 oxen walked around the capstan every day, pulling the bridge a few feet farther out across the bridge piers until they got it in place. They jacked it up, took the timbers and log rollers out from under it, and set it down on the piers. Sounds like a story somebody would have made up, but that's actually how the bridge got there. At one time, that was a common way of building bridges. Apparently, it was a lot easier to build them on land, and that makes sense. You could lean a ladder up against them and work on them very easily, and then once you knew how to move them around on rollers, do it that way, than it was to hoist heavy material high up above the water onto the bridge piers and try to construct a bridge from there. This bridge weighs well over 230 tons. The 2 oxen were able to pull the bridge because the block and tackle in the cable amplified the pulling power of each of the oxen from 1 to 180. So even though there were only 2 oxen walking around the capstan, theoretically there were 360 pulling the bridge out across the bridge piers. One of the major structural components of the bridge is the lattice truss. You can see that from either side. The lattice truss weighs over 20 tons and is made of Douglas fir. When you go under the bridge, you can see the tails of the truss extending below the roadway. You can see they are held together with very large dowels. Those are called trunnels or tree nails. They are 2 inches in diameter and over 2 feet long. In years past, that was a common way of fastening large structures, bridges, and barns. The entire bridge is fastened that way. The only metal fasteners in the bridge are nails that hold the shingles on, metal brackets that hold the roadway down so it doesn't rattle when cars and buses go over, and metal braces that hold the bridge itself down to the bridge piers so it doesn't fall off the bridge piers in the wind. The name of the bridge is Holzbrücke, which means wooden bridge. Limestone formation Niagara Falls